Photographing large products. How do you go from this to this? That's what we'll cover today in photographing very large products in production environments. We'll start with planning, setup, shooting, and finally post-production. Hello creators, my name is Bear Breimer. We're here to help creators produce projects of all sorts. As a creator for more than 45 years, I want to share some of what I've learned. And today it's all about photographing large products. Now let's crack on with the video. So here's the final photograph that we delivered to the client. As mentioned in the opening, we start with planning. The first thing we need to address is, what does the client expect you to deliver? This is critical. The last thing you want to do is deliver a photograph that does not meet the client's expectations. With this specific machine, the client also wanted us to shoot video along with the photograph. But we'll be focusing on the photograph for the tutorial part, as well as give you a few tips along the way on how to handle video. If you'd like for us to do a separate video on how to shoot video, let us know in the comments below. When our clients want video and a master photograph, we usually set up continuous lighting first. Then if needed for the master photograph at the end, we add flash for details. With this particular client, we needed the master photograph to be printed at actual size of the machine. This was a big deal because the machine is approximately 20 feet wide, 18 feet deep, and 15 feet tall. In order for this to work, I needed to produce a final photograph that was approximately 3 gigs in size. That meant a photograph that would be actual size of the machine and still be 95 to 120 dpi. So the first step was to make a trip to the warehouse where we would be shooting. I needed to see the lighting conditions that we had to overcome, see what room we had to work within, because quite often there's very little room to set up. This is due to shooting in a working environment. First, we decided the back wall would need to be completely covered with white vinyl. It's temporary and easier than painting. As usual, the floors surrounding the machine and beneath the machine would need to be covered with white vinyl also. This helps with reflective lighting for the video and the master photograph. We also added a white muslin background, and depending on the size of the machine, the angle of the different video shots, and the final photograph, we sometimes add an additional background on the side. If we're only shooting photographs, we don't spend too much time stretching the muslin material smooth. There's no need to, because we'll be cutting the background out in Photoshop. We need the white for contrast and bounce. Less wrinkles means less time rotoscoping out the background. So the first thing, floor covering. This is a must. When shooting just a photograph, we set up the camera first. Then we only cover the floor with the affected areas of the shot. However, if we're also shooting video, we have to cover much more of the floor. We have to account for the overhead shot of the additional camera angle and the other angle. We usually set up on a tall tripod, but in the case of this particular machine, it was so large, the client provided a 6 to 8 foot platform for us to put the tripod on. When we have the main camera set up for the final shot, we take a test shot and show the client. Setup. As mentioned in the planning stage, we're working in a production environment. This means the lighting is not good and the floors have small metal shavings everywhere. The client usually has an employee sweep up around the machine, but because we'll be on our hands and knees putting down vinyl, we choose to sweep again. The vinyl we use can be found at most any sign supplier. It's a heavyweight vinyl that we cut into strips of 2 foot by 4 foot, 2 by 2, just a variety of sizes, so we can put it around and beneath the machine. We usually use Duratex 13 ounce reverse wound banner. I'll put a link to the company down in the description below. While the vinyl is being put down, we begin setup of the necessary C-stands, power cables, soft boxes, and cameras. We then set up banner stands and stretch the muslin backdrop material for temporary walls. I'll leave links below also. Once the floor is covered and the backgrounds are set, we spend time setting the lighting and taking test shots. When we're happy with the lighting, we'll take one last shot to show the client to review. With this machine, we were shooting video first, so we had 4 additional cameras set to record multiple angles. This is only necessary when we're shooting video due to the price of the materials used in running these machines. We did one last step when everything is ready. We wipe down the machines with a little bit of WD-40. This not only gets rid of any messy fingerprints or dirt, it also cleans up the mess from previous machine runs. At the same time, it gives a little bit of extra luster to the photograph and to the video. It also cuts down time in post-editing, shooting. With this machine, because it was video first, we turned on all cameras, lights, and had the machine run through many cycles. Once we were sure we had enough video, we turned off all additional cameras and removed them from the final shot. The main camera stays in the exact same place, and we adjust the lighting. Quite often we cannot get far enough away from the machine to get a photograph that's not distorted. And in this case, there were items in the foreground that could not be moved. We had to take care of that in post as usual. Due to the size of the machine, I set my exposure for the continuous lights first. Then we set up flash lights to fill in detailed areas. In order to get the best resolution, I take a series of bracketed exposures of the full machine. That's usually at 24 millimeters and it's distorted, which I'll correct in post also. Then I zoom in on multiple locations of the machine that need details. Again, I take multiple exposures of each of these shots. Once all the shots are done, I usually have 30 to 130 photographs of the same machine. This allows me the freedom to add details, highlights, and shadows to areas that normally do not have enough resolution. Post-production. To start with, I open up Adobe Bridge in order to see all the images in their separate exposures. I go in, find my best overall wide-angle shot of the full machine. I open it in Adobe Camera Raw and make a few necessary adjustments. I then open it in Adobe Photoshop, double-click the layer to make it a transparent layer. I then take the direct selection tool, feather it to 1 pixel, and do just a very rough selection. What I'm looking to do is to delete the background so I have a good idea of the area that I'm overall working with. The first step is to choose my overall image size. What I will do is go up to Image, Image Size to change the resolution to what I want in the final. I usually go with inches. In this image, I'll make it 36 inches and keep it at 27. I also change the resolution to a very high resolution. Make sure Resample Automatic is selected. I then go back to Adobe Bridge. This time I'm looking to find one of the images that I want to have more detail in. So I take this image, do some light adjustments in Adobe Camera Raw, open it up in Photoshop, and then, of course, as before, I'll take the background, convert it to a transparent layer, take my direct selection tool at 1 pixel feather. For all the detail overlay images, I will simply select them and drag them on top. This makes a separate layer on top of what is already there. I'll roughly position each one of these and then change it to difference. Difference is great for lining up an overlay. What it does is wherever the image matches exactly will turn solid black. So we know we're not going to get the exact match here, but we can get it close. We're going to use the distort, edit, transform, distort, and we can get it relatively close. It doesn't have to be an exact match. What we're looking for is an overall, but especially where the overlay image meets the underlying image. That's where we need it to match as closely as possible on size and width and stuff. Then I change it back to normal so I can see the actual where it matches and make the final adjustments there. Once I match that close enough, I can go into the layer, add a mask. Now I'm going to lightly blend the foreground image, the one with a lot of detail, into the background image. I don't have to worry too much about the side where the machine meets the background because the background will be completely cut out later. Now I'll go back to Bridge, find another image that I want to do the detail overlay on, and do this exact same process. Again, a slight color adjustment. Select the area that I want to overlay, drag it over on top. It becomes a separate layer, make it difference, and then start to adjust it with the distortion tool. The biggest thing here is that you want it wherever it touches the machine beneath it, the overlay, you want it to match more exactly. The background's going to be cut out once it's all flattened anyway. So that's the reason I take a little bit of extra time to do that, to make sure that those areas match. I'll then use the mask tool to blend the two layers together where the machine touches. I don't need to worry about blending the machine where it touches the background. That will be cut out later. In this one, because it's a demo, I am just showing you roughly. I usually will take a lot more time to make that blend much better and smoother. And you'll see that on the final image. So far, here's what we've got. The base image and the two detail images. Once I've created all the image overlays with detail that I want, I will save the image. I'm not going to show you all of them right now because there's no reason to repeat the process just over and over. So once I've saved the image, I can go in and flatten it out. As you can see, there's a big difference in image quality. So once I've flattened the image, then I'm ready to cut out the background. Again, 1 pixel feather on the direct selection tool. This is a very tedious and necessary step to make sure the image is sharp in all the details. By doing it this way, any parts of the machine that may have been soft along the edges near the background now look crisp. I've tried many different ways, but my preferred tool is the direct selection tool set to 1 pixel. So far, I've not found any auto selection tool that works with enough precision to cut out a machine. I know there's a lot of AI tools that work on people, but I've not found one that works on machines. If anybody out there knows of an AI tool or some sort of other auto select tool that works on machines, let me know. I'll give it a test and report back to you. Even though the detailed overlay photos are better resolution, there's still imperfections and color issues and shadow problems. I enlarged the photo, used the brush at 2 to 6 pixels, make lines on parts of the metal out of similar colors to add more definition. Once I'm happy with the sharpness of the lines, I go back and I use the dodge and burn tool. This is necessary to give enough contrast because a lot of these parts are black on black and it's difficult to light them well enough. I use the healing brush tool to get rid of some of the small scratches or dust or dirt that didn't get cleaned during the initial cleaning process. This sometimes feels like it takes a little bit longer than it should, but when you consider the amount of time you use to set up, to photograph, to piece them all together, this is really that last final touch that makes the big difference in the final photograph. Once all these little details have been done, you'll see it makes a very large difference. Not only the resolution, but the crispness of what the machine looks like. Side by side, it's just no comparison as to how nicely it looks. Before adding the shadows, I'll convert the image from RGB to CMYK and preserve the layers. I then convert the image back to RGB. This ensures that the color gamut is good for not only online and video, but also for print application. I'll then merge all the layers, add guidelines, and make sure that my distortion is corrected one final time. I will usually build my floor shadows out of 3 or 4 different layers. The first layer, I use the direct selection tool set to about 65 to 110. For the color, I open up the color picker and zero out the CMYK. I add 30%. This gives me a nice clean black. I then do a rough selection for my first pass, my first layer. Then add in the black. On my second shadow layer, I'll change the feather of my direct selection to about 40. Then I'll make a selection on top of it. I'll change that layer to multiply. I then use the dodge and burn tools to change my base layer to intensify parts or lighten parts that need to be adjusted. Once that's done, I flatten all the shadows into one layer, my machine in one layer, and my background in another layer. So I usually end up with 4 layers: my white, my background, my shadows, and the machine. That gives me enough flexibility to use anywhere I need to in the future, whether it's video, online, wherever the client needs it. So here's the original, and here's what it looks like after we've done all of our touch-up and adjustments. You can see a huge difference in how clean the machine looks and how there's contrast between black metal on black metal. And yet the chrome and the lighter parts are not totally blown out. So here's a little bit before and a little bit after. You can see just a huge difference, not only in the perspective, but the graininess, the sharpness. So what started out as a single 24 meg file is now a 2 gig file, which has great sharpness, good contrast, and because we've removed the full background, we can now use it in multiple ways. We can create a PNG for the website. We use it in video. We can use it in just about any application because it's good color balance and it's also large enough to use in any application. So again, my final image is 4 basic layers: background, machine shadow, machine, and white layer. This allows me the freedom to change the format to fit any of my clients' future needs. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this informative and valuable. We would love it if you would subscribe to the channel or comment below with a question. As a thank you, here's one of my favorite picks. As always, see you in the next video. Now creators, crack on.